Hello, and welcome to the Rooted and Rising podcast from Stony Point Center. You're going to hear from voices of changemakers from across the social justice spectrum, from secular voices as well as faith-based leaders. We hope that you find these conversations to be deep, meaningful, and insightful, and we hope that you remember that we are not free until everyone is free, and it will take all of us working together to get there. Thank you for joining us for another podcast. I'd like to introduce to our guest today. We're with Robyn Harper, and I'm going to let Robyn share a little bit about herself.
Hi, Brian, and hi, all. My name is Robyn Harper. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the founder of the Chiron Project. The Chiron Project is a business I launched to support leaders and organizations navigate social power and lead anti-oppressive change.
Fantastic. Fantastic. And where are you based, Robyn?
I'm based in the Washington, D.C. area.
Okay. And if somebody wanted to get in touch with you, now we'll put this in the notes as well, but I always like somebody to share. How would we get in touch with you if we want more information?
Sure, the best way to get in touch with me is through our website, www.thechironproject.com. And Chiron is spelled Chiron.
Wonderful. All right. So Robyn and I have had many conversations, very
Mhm.
inspired by the work that she does. I think it's very in line with Stony Point's focus on social justice and training both secular and faith-based individuals to put their desires for what the world should be, the world they envision, into action. And so, Robyn, as with everybody on the podcast, I'm going to ask three questions to help frame our conversation. The first one is, what keeps you up at night?
Man, that was a hard question
Right?
to think about. So many things. But if I had to pick one, I would choose the affordability crisis.
Hmm.
Um, of course, there's so much to talk about just within the realm of how this increasing number of people are losing access to things
Hmm.
like food, housing, healthcare, you name it. But there's a piece of the affordability crisis that I think often doesn't get talked about enough, which is how it directly relates to um, an even broader scarcity mindset, which impacts decision making, even of those who aren't necessarily being directly impacted by the affordability crisis. This idea that, and
Hmm.
honestly, an idea that's, I would argue, is more short-sighted, a little bit more misguided, but very understandable. This idea that if you or other people engage in social resistance, it's actually going to be more of a loss than a gain, right? This idea that if I risk too much, I'm going to also be at a loss. I'm going to also be a victim of this affordability crisis. And I find that, like so many things, this desire to prevent loss, particularly financial loss, often takes people out of the movement before they're even in it, and it puts so much more burden on those who are being most directly impacted. And then in the long run, what it does is it shortens our shortens the lifetime of what would have been a much longer, much more robust, much more strategic and resourced resistance movement, right? Because we're all trying to avoid or we just don't have any more in the first place. That worries me.
Wow. Okay. That's an interesting take on the affordability crisis because you often, hear about it politically,
Hmm.
and in macro kind of
Hmm.
ways because it's a micro impact, but what are we doing macro in a macro way to make that affordable? But the impact on people's ability to get engaged or stay engaged in the fight for social justice is impacted. Okay, that's
Yeah.
helpful, which leads us right into that next question is what are you doing to address that or seeing other people doing or wish other people would do?
I'll blend my answer to
All
all
right.
of that. So what I find myself doing through my work and also through my own like volunteering is I'm really engaging more in what I call everyday hero development,
Mm,
right? And so I think about it as how do I ensure that people can bring their whole selves, including their fears, into an actual strategic conversation about what it means to organize and lead and stand firm for values in this space. And so what it looks like is being able to just say up front, like, hey, we know that the budget isn't the same anymore.
mm,
We know that your time isn't the same anymore. We know that things are much more things are risky in a way that you might not have experienced before. But that doesn't mean we completely stop. It doesn't mean that we freeze. It means that we figure out the safest way to still continue moving forward. So I work with individuals as a coach. I train new and up and coming organizers.
mm.
I'm a part of a group called Rising Organizers, which has been really just motivating and inspiring to me. Um, but really, it's this opportunity for folks to get out of this myth of perfection, this all or nothing mentality of like, oh, if I can't fix the problem completely, then surely I'm not needed. It's like, no, we need you. We need you in the ways that you uniquely add value to the world. And even value is a tricky word for me because sometimes folks think of it as monetary, like what labor can I offer? I'm like, no, sometimes it's you have a kind voice, you have a warm feeling, and people want to be around you. That's important, right? Rest is important in the space. What's the word I'm looking for? Feeding people, right? Like all of the things that um people don't necessarily think about as, leadership. A specific example that comes to mind for me is particularly when I think about what was going on in Minneapolis, right? Um, it was
Mm,
incredibly cold. Someone was handing out hot chocolate,
mm.
right? We don't talk about that person, but that person had a realization like, I have something to offer. There is a need. It might not be exactly the thing that everyone's always talking about, but people were able to sustain more in that space because they had a warm beverage, right? And so I want to do a better job of equipping folks with those insights, those personal aha moments of, oh, I can do this thing even when they're not the typical ways that we think about helping and resistance and protest and things of that nature, so that they see themselves as an authentic um, member of this broader pro-social movement.
No, I love that. You really described that well. And it makes me think of a conversation we had previously, which was about doing a class on sustainability.
Mhm.
The idea being, how do you sustain your intentions for action? Because sometimes we get in too deep, and maybe this is that affordability as far as how much energy I have. There's a limited amount, and we
Yes.
think there's more, but how can we start at a level that we can maintain? And then if you want to go further, but even bringing hot chocolate. I remember in the 80s, my sister was in film school and she did this film. I don't know if he's still doing it on the Sandwich Man in New York City. And once a week, he would make a whole ton of sandwiches. And I believe it was he and his son would go out and deliver those to folks that were experiencing being unhoused. Um, and that took a lot, but
Mhm.
he found a place where he could, be equipped. I don't think he was from New York City, but that's where he was doing his distribution. So,
Yeah.
where do you find yourself as the hot chocolate person? Or are you the person that's, holding the bullhorn? I don't know.
Right,
Where's that
exactly.
sustainability?
I mean, even your story about the sandwich guy, it's reminding me like as at the time of this recording, unfortunately,
Yeah.
Washington, D.C. is still under occupation. And I know of folks who have just they've organized a way of getting groceries for their neighbors, right? Who are afraid to leave their home for fear of ICE and things like that. But yes, there's mutual aid organizations that absolutely need to continue to be funded and supported. But that wasn't within that particular group's locus of control. What they knew was there's this person who I've lived next to for so long, and if I can go to the grocery store and pick up, an
Hmm.
extra carton of milk, some more eggs, and that creates and it feeds a family, then that's what I'm going to do. And that idea of sustainability that you mentioned earlier, it's really key because so much of the opposition side strategy right now is to overwhelm. And what that
Mm.
does is it creates what I like to call adrenaline-based reactivity, right?
Yeah.
And so you feel this really massive moment of energy, and I'm like, I gotta do something with it. And you quickly get tapped out, even though it wasn't a
Mm.
momentary issue, right? We know this is long term. We know we have to be able to not just do something, but do something consistently, right? That's how we generate even greater and even deeper impact in the work. And so I've recently went to a panel where there was a elder labor organizer who talked about, mis ideas that are often misinterpreted. So this idea of prioritization, it doesn't mean that you're ever going to get to everything on the list. It's choose what's on your list and hold your line.
Mm. Oh,
And
that's interesting.
yeah.
I wonder how many people go through the process to create that list, and prioritize it or triage it, because this is a long struggle, as we all know. I mean, I've got good trouble here because it's inspiring, but John Lewis didn't create that in
Mhm.
2000. He was doing good trouble for a long time.
Yes.
His level of sustainability, he needed to keep kind of going up to a place of visibility and impact.
Hmm.
Not all of us have that. I pray for those who run for Congress.
Yeah.
We have a lot of folks that are right now working in New York 17 to run for Congress. And I just think, good on you. What are you getting into? And can you sustain that energy? And even just running, just that act. But then there's those people that need to be involved to support those that are running for office. I'm just using this as an example,
Hmm.
from lining up meetings to vetting phone calls to answering emails to making sure, going back to the food thing, that there's food at events or that their candidate actually gets to eat when they're running from meeting to meeting. So where's that level? And then I also think I've got some family members. You were just talking about the flooding the field, and how do we exhaust people? And it's intentional and it's planned
Hmm.
out and it's meant to be that way and it works.
Yes.
So, the only way to combat the flooding the field is to let people focus on one thing. That's that prioritization. I have a family member who has basically stopped watching news and stopped doing whatever because they just get too triggered and too amped up. And, on some level, I think that they have tapped out. I do pick them up for certain things and get them engaged and share what we're doing, which is good and empowering. But we can see it every day in the people around us
Hmm.
that are exhausted, sometimes even before they start. And that's one of my hopes in what we're doing here, both with podcasts as well as the programming that Stony
Hmm.
Point Center is nurturing, is giving people that ability to get out of the I'm frustrated point to I'm frustrated and I'm going to do something
Hmm.
point, and I think that's our witness. Which actually brings me to the next question is, you've given us some challenges and some ways that you see it addressed. Where do you see hope in the world right now? Where do you see hope?
Oh man, I briefly touched on the fact that I've been a part of this group called Rising Organizers.
Mm,
Um, what Rising Organizers is, it's an opportunity for folks in the community who are new to community organizing to come and learn how to do it, right? It's not It's nonpartisan. It is not issue specific. It is truly a space for anyone, particularly in the DC area, to try something new with a network of support that's really behind them. And so what gives me hope is just how many folks continue walking through that door,
Mm.
oftentimes saying, I've never done this before, I have no idea what I'm doing. The diversity of ages,
Yeah.
backgrounds. We have folks, with law degrees, and we have folks who haven't graduated college yet, right? We have people who have been, high school student organizers, all the way to people who have been, organizing in the DC community for over a decade, right? And what gives me hope is this idea that folks are still finding the courage to do something that honestly is that most would find absurd, to be perfectly frank, right? This
Hmm.
idea of, well, you're looking at this problem. Some of us are completely overwhelmed. We don't know what at all we can do. We honestly might not even think that anything can be done, and they're stepping into a space and saying, you know what, I'm going to try at least one more time. And every single person that I know of that has entered that program, they have left with greater clarity around what they can do for their community. And I'm able to follow them as an alumni and just see all of the interesting ways that folks from all different walks of life are able to uh, engage in their community's efforts. And so it's somewhat related to what I do because like that's my community work side. It's related to what I do because you had asked the question earlier around, how often do people engage in like this strategy work around what
Mm.
can I do? That's what my work is, right? It's
Hmm.
it's around helping folks actually sit down and have a one-on-one conversation. I can't tell you how many times I've been in at an event and someone asked the question during the Q&A, like, what can people do? And you get a genuine answer back, but it's an answer for a large group. And what
Hmm.
I find is if that answer
Mm.
doesn't match the interest,
Yeah.
the I mean, honestly, even the availability, right? If they say what you can do is come to this event on Saturday, and you look at your calendar, it's like, I have something on Saturday,
Right.
then it's done.
Opportunity missed.
Right. I work with folks one-on-one, right? As
Right.
part of my coaching. And it's like, how do we really design something for you,
Right.
right? We know what gives you energy. We know what's going to feel like way more work and what's going to feel like, oh, I can just do this like it's nothing, right? I help create a plan for
Hmm.
how people can use their specific social power to do work that's in alignment with both their personal values and the broader social needs that we're facing.
That's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
I think that's really important, individual support. Like
Hmm.
people can't feel alone. One of the things that we're committing to here as much as we can is ensuring that people can bring somebody with them when they come to an event. So oftentimes we'll send, if it's a church training, the pastor will go, or maybe the person who's in charge of the mission committee or something. And then they're supposed to come home with this information. They haven't been
Hmm.
trained to be a trainer. That's really what we're asking them to do if they want to get any traction, right? We had a housing event this past November, and we had one church that sent 3 people in person and 2 people joined online just by themselves. And I just thought, oh my gosh, that is a congregation that is going to be able to do something. And then most of the folks had come individually. And that was the aha for me that, if they can put it into their context. So going to your, you can join us on Saturday. Well, if there's 2 of them there, they're going to know we can't go on Saturday. We'll either have to ask another question or maybe we can do something together.
Hmm.
Um, so that following up and making it accessible and like personal
Yes,
personally, yeah, accessible is really important.
absolutely. Absolutely. Because when we talk about the importance of relationship building, right? Like
Hmm.
that's really what I'm hearing as you talk about,
Right.
the bring someone along.
Hmm.
If you give yourself a head start when it comes to building relational trust, right? Like I'm bringing at least one person that I already know, right? That I've already started that relationship with, whether it's someone that you work with, whether it's someone that you've organized with before, someone who lives close by, but that level of connection, again, it creates safety,
Hmm.
right? Like there's something about not doing it alone
Mm.
that makes things so much more likely to happen. And so, anytime an organization, when I think about like Stony Point Center, when
Hmm.
you are being strategic around how do we ensure that relationship building and
Hmm.
expansion and nurturing is a part of our work, I think you're going to see not just folks show up for the event, but folks actually show up for the long-term work.
Right. Right. I also, so linking back to the scarcity,
Hmm.
I wonder if that also helps with that feeling of lack of resources or burnout or, all of the scarcity things that can happen. Going
Absolutely.
alone is pretty
Yeah.
exhausting.
And part of that is one of the narratives that's being talked about, right? This idea of you're the only one who thinks this way.
Mm,
You're the only one who sees this as a problem, right?
right.
And so you immediately have to address, actually, no,
It's not just
there's
me.
no scarcity of community.
That's right.
There's like
That's
it's
right.
still in fact I would say
That's
in
right.
some spaces it's becoming strong community is becoming stronger than ever, right? It
Mm,
is something that folks are realizing that like, I need to invest into this. And it's not a waste of time, right, to talk to people, right? Like again, that's one of those things where it's like, oh, it's better for me to keep working and doing things in isolation because, again, there's this narrative that that's what productivity looks like. Actually, no, spending some time to just chat,
yeah.
right, is
Yeah.
actually quite an
Yeah, it
investment to
definitely does.
me.
You're actually making me jump a little bit here. History major, sorry. But like historically, and this goes like prehistory historically, when there's an existential threat, that's when community forms and people pull together and new rules of being and supporting and understanding happen. And I think right now for many people, it is existential,
Mhm,
right? Those people that are afraid to go outside, for example.
mhm.
I'm not one of them, luckily. But that's a reality.
Yeah.
But if I feel compelled to help my neighbor, and who is your neighbor, right? Those that are in need, um, then that's going to pull me into more community. Which actually leads me to another question. A couple of questions here. So, when did you feel the call to fill this need, right? When did you move into this space and start being active in the work that you are? Does that make sense as a question?
Yes, it does. And there's layers to that question for
Yeah, of
me.
course.
I I hmm. The first answer that came to mind is
Mm.
growing up and even going to school. So fun fact about me, I sat as the kindergarten representative on my school student government association. So that already tells you the sort of person that I was. Like, right, I'm ready to represent the needs of the kindergarten class. My
Absolutely.
mom has a copy of my notes where I'm just clearly learning how to write letters, but that writing is going towards trying
Wow.
to fill a need. That evolved very beautifully into a career of working in public education, specifically around educational equity. And so, what I found doing that work and why I pursued that work was because I felt as though education was a critical component of um, maximizing the potential of people and communities, right? When folks had access to quality education, to relevant education, to culturally affirming education, all of a sudden you were able to see um, businesses get created, and these were the future politicians, and there were so many opportunities of creatives, right? Like musicians and things. I was able to tap into a wide group of incredible people just by focusing on education. But in that work, when I was working in public education, I very quickly learned and honestly was a bit humbled by how much we ask schools to
Mm.
carry the burden of, when really it was supposed to be the work of broader community focused agencies, right? And so what that meant was schools, who are responsible for all of the things that children bring into the door, um, are only really equipped to solve things related to learning,
Hmm.
right? Even though everyone knew, and whether they whispered or yelled about it, it's like, well, actually, the issue here is housing access, right? The issue here
Mm.
is, folks are distracted because, our children can't focus on math because they're hungry, right?
Hungry.
And schools didn't really have that
Yeah.
ability to, or at least the school systems that I worked for, did not have the ability to effectively work in all of those spaces at once.
Yeah.
And so it was always on my mind of how do I do something that is related to education, but not so focused in specifically public education. And so that's when I started pursuing this idea of popular education. And so I have a part of my work called Anti-Oppression Academy, right, which is designed to
Mm.
give deep, high-level educational experiences for anyone in a community to learn about the things that, often can't be taught by schools, even if they want it to be. Certainly a difficulty these days. And that's how I ended up getting into coaching, because basically I would create this group level activity, get folks interested, get them activated, give them the language and things to really understand, like, what is it that I really want out of my community? What do I want out of this nation? All of these things. And then coaching was a way of saying, and how can I specifically get support in, grappling with internalized depression, grappling with how do I, as a person who's juggling all sorts of things, I'm a parent, I'm a, career, like I have a career, like how do I try to
Mm.
wedge what should have been there in the first place,
Right.
but we know again, systemically was designed to not be able to be easily
Hmm.
participated in. How do I do that personally? And so, really, at the core of my entire career and trajectory, it's always been about learning, it's always been about growth. And that I don't think will ever change, regardless of where I am.
That's fantastic. There's many shoots of questions that I want to jump off on, but I want to just go to a term that you used. You said popular education. So
Mhm.
I've heard the term popular education from Miles Horton, who founded the Highlander Folk School. Can you share a little bit about what popular education means,
Sure. And I'm going to,
if that's okay?
yeah, yeah. So I think, particularly as a historian, you might
Yeah.
have a better handle on the roots of the actual words.
No, I'd just love to hear what it means to you when you said
Oh,
popular
sure, sure.
education.
So
Yeah.
when I talk about popular education, I probably will more often use the word community education. This
Okay.
idea that learning, and high quality learning specifically,
Mm.
has often been, it's been made more and more exclusive, particularly for adults,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
so what I found was, folks were frustrated that many people didn't seem to understand the social issues that were happening. Like, how could you not know? How could you not understand what DEI is? How could you not understand how tariffs work? And I would ask them, I said, well, what about their life experience makes you believe that they would know, right?
Mm,
If we know that depending on what news channel you watch, you have a very different idea. And again, news is not about education, it's about information.
right.
So even at its best, it's just giving you
Hmm.
information. You don't necessarily tie it into your life. Um, there's higher education, right? Like, so folks had to invest time. Maybe you have a job where they're investing in, that professional education. But for the most part, most adults do not have the opportunity to engage in deep learning
Mm,
about issues. Maybe they listen to a podcast,
right.
maybe they read a book. I think community education is about bringing that same sort of classroom level
Mm,
intentionality for back to everyday people in a way that is completely accessible. It is, again, highly relevant to their
yeah.
local context, and it sees them as experts too.
Yep.
So that's how I think about it. Like,
No, I think you're right on. I think you're
yeah,
right on. A movement that the answers are in the room and that people have more
absolutely.
knowledge than they may or
Yeah.
not know that they do. And I like the local context in that as well,
Mhm.
that it brings it back to where you are and not just, I don't know, ancient Greece or,
Yes.
something that we don't have any concept of
Right.
other than what we're told about,
Hmm.
which is interesting. I also wonder with the times being as heavy as they are and as active as they are and as frustrating as they are and as exhausting as they are you seeing more people engage you, seek you out, engage the work that you do? Has that grown over time? Has it lessened? Does that make sense? Like, have you
Yes.
seen a change maybe in the last 5 or 6 years?
Ooh. So my business has only been around for a bit over a year at this point.
Okay.
Um,
But
but
you've been
but
engaged
but I've been
for longer than
engaged.
that. Yes.
And so what I would say is I'm seeing a shift in, for lack of better words, the type of people who
Okay.
are becoming who are interested in this work. I particularly right after 2020 and the murder of George Floyd,
Yeah.
there was a corporate interest that surged, right?
Mm.
And so, just thinking about that timeline, there was a period where you would get your larger organizations, I was getting more senior executives of pretty well-established nonprofits, right? School districts
Hmm.
were adopting these initiatives and programs. And now what you're seeing is a bit of a flip as again, folks
Yeah.
are considering it more and more quote unquote risky to stay
Yeah.
engaged or keep engaged. And you're seeing more folks who are involved in whether you call it grassroots or like I said, I tend to think of it as direct to community work,
Okay.
right? The folks who have a level of accountability to community, whether formal or informal, right? I think about it as if you still have to look those people in the eyes, more than likely you're still engaged in the work. If you've created a way to kind of opt out of that type of accountability because it wasn't strategically built in, I'm seeing them less and less. And so now for me, particularly as someone who wants to be an ethical
Hmm.
and accessible entrepreneur, it's really having me think through how do I ensure that my business model
Yeah.
can account for the needs of folks who, again, don't
Mm.
have access to the same
So hard.
level of resources, right? It's
Yeah.
really hard, but it's also, I hope that I'm able to bring that conversation back to those corporations, those nonprofits, those school districts, and say, hey,
Right.
they haven't stopped and they haven't had need. And again, it really shifts this idea of the scarcity mindset because again, folks who have been well resourced are like, we don't have anything. And I'm like, well, I'm working with folks who have basically nothing,
Yeah.
and they're finding a way and they're doing it well.
Hmm.
Let's have let's build enough trust with each other so we can really have the conversation of like, hey,
Yeah.
it's scary,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. The financial factor. I just
Mm-hmm.
jumped. You did a couple financial factors. You did business and
Mm-hmm.
what are businesses doing, right? It makes me think long term, are we going to find out what did businesses really feel? Are they just duck and covering now, or were they just duck and covering then? I don't
Mm-hmm.
know.
Yeah.
But maybe we'll look back and be able to see that more clearly. But then, oh shoot, I lost my thread. Businesses. Oh, being able to sustain businesses like yours, where you're coaching and your heart is in this. I know some realtors who try to use some of their experience and leverage for housing at a low cost
Mm-hmm.
housing, accessible housing, and that's really challenging to do. And then that circles all the way back to your affordability thing,
Exactly.
right? Because
Exactly.
if we're feeling challenged in our own work, even though we want it to be something else, and camp and retreat centers have had the same experience as well. How do we serve everybody when we're nonprofits and we're trying to make it and we're expected to make it accessible for everybody? Even those who are able to pay are expecting something less because it's nonprofit. Do you know what I mean? So there's this whole dance. But I think, yeah, you've got to be ethical in that. You've got to have integrity in that, and you got to be creative in that. And it's interesting. You find when you do offer those opportunities for those of means to step in, either, pay one forward, or if you choose a sliding scale, people are usually pretty honest where they are on that. Most people that can afford it don't hit I need this for free.
Yes.
And then we can hopefully offer those things at a reduced price for those who are available. But yeah, those of us that are working in the social justice realm and nonprofit realm tend to be in the under financially appreciated world. I don't know if that's the correct way to put it, So yeah, which is an encouragement for remembering who we work with and who we work for.
Absolutely.
All right, as we get along here, are there any other, well, one question before we head towards closing. What has energized you or what wins have you had lately that you could share? Like, is there anything that you've been like, oh my gosh, this is why I do what I do? Or this happened this week, or I was talking to this person and I really thought blank and I saw this in them and it encouraged me. I just gave you a whole lot of ways to go on that, but
Yes.
like it
Yes.
kind of goes to the where's the hope? But like
Where's the hope?
what enthused you? Like what got you, in that wow, this is why I do what I do kind of mode.
So yes, and hopefully I can say this in a way that um, lands correctly for
Yeah.
people. So one of the parts of my work that I think requires the greatest amount of courage is the work that I do related to bias incident response. So this is for people or for organizations who are in the midst of the hardest part of whether you want to call it DEI, social justice, whatever type of work, right? Like it's that
Hmm.
moment where you realize, okay, something has gone wrong. Um, there's a difference between having that sort of situation and immediately going towards, you know, defense or legal protection. And I'm not saying don't do
Hmm.
those things. I'm saying if that is the only aspect that you
Right.
are concerned with, that's a different mindset or entry point than someone who is trying to figure out what do I need to learn from this situation and how can I heal and repair trust in this situation. And so one of the areas that's giving me hope is that folks are becoming increasingly able to identify something wrong has happened, right?
Mm.
It's not like everything I do is a complete crisis, right? Like sometimes it's I got this email about a person who's wondering why I did not speak up on this issue. I didn't think
Mm.
that I was supposed to be speaking up on this issue, but is this an opportunity for me to make a different decision? And that's who I work with. I get a lot of hope And I feel a lot of wins every time someone takes that moment that could have pushed them into defensive mode, into this is why I don't do anything in the first place, this isn't working. And rather they take it into an opportunity to truly stay true to what they claim to value.
Hmm.
And I'm seeing that more and more. I'm seeing a lot of um, relationships and communities heal in ways that could never happen if issues weren't directly addressed. Like
Mm.
we try to
Yep.
think that if we ignore it, like it'll die down. But I'm like, those wounds,
Yeah.
people carry it. Now that they're getting addressed, folks are really more inclined to continue not just leaning in, but leaning
Hmm.
in coordination and community.
Yeah. Yeah, that's big. That's big. So, two things that Robin and I have been talking about, and we're really hoping that we can get these things going in the near future. I talked about sustainability. How do you sustain yourself? What level of sustaining? And that's not the title, but how do you do social justice in a way that you can keep doing? And then another one Robin was sharing was tough conversations. How do you navigate those conversations? Because they're going to come up. If you get involved in social justice, you are going to if you're doing it well with integrity, you're going to upset somebody. That's kind of, a litmus test on, where you are. But that can be, gosh, that can be that paralyzing. Oh my gosh, what do I do? Because that's language that we don't, we're not necessarily taught how to navigate that. So I'm looking forward to both of those. And I'm glad that you share that gift with people. I'm glad that people see you as somebody who can coach them, who can give them. Gosh, I've just been inspired by your breadth and understanding of where people engage, and your openness and your listening. You definitely listen more than you talk, which is great. It's just you're refreshing. So thank you very much. Is there anything before we close that you'd like to share?
Thank you. I guess I would also just say the Chiron Project is also really
Hmm.
good at being creative, right? So if there's any sort of support that you or someone you know is looking for and you just can't figure out the words for what it actually is, still
Hmm.
feel free to reach out because, we're designing the answers to all of the social work in real time.
Yeah.
My work is no exception to that. So
Yeah.
if you are wanting a thought partner, just someone to figure out like what could it possibly be, I would love to hear from you.
Great. All right. Well, you heard her. Reach out. She's got time. She wants to listen. She's got a big heart. So thank you very much, Robin. I really appreciate your time, and we look forward to seeing more of you.
Thank
So
you so
thank you.
much, Brian. It's
Okay,
been such a pleasure. Thank you.
great. Take care.